Hey guys, it's Nicole Auerbach, college football reporter for USA Today Sports. I am here in Ohio Stadium. I will actually just give you a quick... Everyone is gone because a few hours since the craziness here, which we will unpack. Please be sure to comment with questions about any of the results from today's rivalry game. We'll start with Michigan-Ohio State since that was here. 2 versus 3, most anticipated game of the regular season, and it did not disappoint. Somehow, Ohio State came all the way back, won in double overtime. Thrilling game, despite missing 2 field goals. Came back. JT Barrett came alive just when they needed to, but mostly Ohio State's defense is what kept them in this game. They were also Ohio State's best offense for a while, for most of the game. Basically gave them the first 14 points of the game. Now, Michigan's defense would have been the story had they won. The Wolverines were terrific for about 3 quarters, and then they looked gassed in the 4th quarter heading into overtime. But they were absolutely stifling and terrific. At least 8 sacks, at least 8 tackles for loss. They were just dominant at the line of scrimmage until they looked tired and until Ohio State was able to pull it away at the end. The big post-game story was Jim Harbaugh. You can go to usatoday.com/sports. It's leading our sports front right now. He went off on officiating. I was in his press conference and he didn't want to talk about anything else. People tried to ask him if he thought his team was playoff caliber, if they had done enough, if he was proud of the defense and the way they played. People tried to ask about Wilton Spate, getting the start after missing last week with his injury. And all Harbaugh wanted to say was that he was disappointed with the officiating. And the reason he said this, there were 3 plays that he brought up in particular. One was the spotting of the down, the second to last play of the game, where it looked to me, and it looked to a lot of people on replay, that JT Barrett was short on the 4th down try in the double overtime. And this was when Ohio State needed to get at least a field goal to keep the game going. There was a replay. They ruled it a first down on the field. Then there was a replay, and then they upheld the ruling. Now, Michigan's sideline was going nuts. They were going like this. They were like, no, he did not get it. They were running around saying that. So there was a ton of energy thinking that Michigan had already won the game. Obviously, that's not the case. That's not what happened. And on the next play, Curtis Samuel won the game for Ohio State. But that was a play that Jim Harbaugh was very frustrated with. He was also very frustrated in Michigan's possession during the double overtime that there was not a pass interference call against Grant Perry, Michigan's receiver who was trying to catch the ball. He thought that Ohio State should have been called for defensive pass interference. He also thought, there was a third, during Ohio State's game-tying drive in the 4th quarter, there was a pass interference call against Michigan on a play that the ball, Jim Harbaugh felt, was uncatchable. And Ohio State got the call that extended the play. It was a 3rd down play, and that was the drive that ultimately Ohio State got a field goal, tied the game, and sent the game to overtime. So those were 3 very pivotal moments. Jim Harbaugh is definitely going to be fined for his comments afterwards. He called them outrageous. He just repeatedly said he was terribly disappointed in the officiating. He went play by play on all these. He called the pass interference call that extended the Ohio State drive, he called that a gift. He really didn't mince words at all. He said he wouldn't talk about anything else. He just went after the officiating. And to be honest, I think that he had some points. I mean, I don't like whining or complaining about officiating or saying that decided the game, because Michigan had plenty of opportunities to put Ohio State away in the 4th quarter. They had outplayed them throughout the entire game and couldn't get the stops when they needed, and also couldn't muster any sort of offense in the 4th quarter. Wilton Spate was responsible for 3 turnovers. Jim Harbaugh himself had a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty, which he said afterwards, he tried to blame it on the ref again. He said that he got it called because that was when he threw off the headset and it looked like he broke his headset. And he was like, how is that a penalty? And the ref said that apparently, according to Harbaugh, that that he would get a technical if this were basketball, because he flipped out and he was throwing his plays and his sheet on the side. And Jim was like, what are you talking about? This has nothing to do with that. This is not basketball. Which, again, good point, but still going to be fined plenty for his comments after that, but you can tell he was very frustrated. People asked whether he thought Michigan was playoff caliber, whether people asked whether he thought Michigan and Ohio State were the two best teams in the Big Ten. Urban Meyer was asked this as well. They said they don't know. I mean, neither of these teams is going to be in the Big Ten championship, which is kind of hard to believe. Next week's matchup is set now. It's going to be Wisconsin and Penn State, both two-loss teams, which is going to present a really interesting case for the College Football Playoff Committee. And I guess we'll get a little bit of a sense of what they're thinking this week, because we have one more rankings on Tuesday before the final rankings, which are next Sunday. So what I think that we'll see is Ohio State will still be considered a very strong team. They said last week, Kirby Hocutt, the committee chair, said that Ohio State was not comparable to Wisconsin and Penn State, that they were kind of a cluster below. And again, they have two losses and Ohio State has one. So if they're not that close and they're not getting compared to each other, then certain elements of the tiebreaker, which are used to determine the four college football playoff spots, tiebreakers are head-to-head results. Tiebreakers are conference championships. So if those don't come into play, and the committee actually believes that Ohio State is unequivocally one of the four best teams in the country, then the fact that they lost to Penn State and the fact that they're not a conference champion may not ultimately matter. Certainly there will be a lot of people who are furious about why did they even play the games, why do we even have conference championships if that happens, but that is a way the committee can go. If there is an element of subjectivity here, when you have a human 12-person panel deciding these things, if they believe Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country, they can put them in. But what it's going to do here, barring upsets, you're going to have maybe Washington come out of the Pac-12 championship game, Clemson, although I think they're going to have some trouble with Virginia Tech in the ACC championship game, Alabama's in. They're going to be number one. They could rest their team next week, and they're still going to be number one. And then you've got the Big Ten champ. So you're either going to have Wisconsin or Penn State, which will have two losses. Penn State's resume is not that close to the other teams. But Wisconsin's two losses are Michigan and Ohio State, both by one possession. One of those games was in overtime. Penn State, Pitt's having a great year. James Conner's a great story, but they're not a top 25 team. And then the other loss is a blowout loss to Michigan. So not quite the same caliber. But the question would be if, say, Wisconsin wins that Big Ten championship game, do they get in or does Ohio State get in? Ohio State, a team that beat Wisconsin. So you could also have that justification. It's harder to justify if it's Penn State because that is the team that beat Ohio State. But like I was saying earlier, if you can argue that they're unequivocally better and not even being compared to Penn State when you're making that decision, you might be able to justify it. Like I said, it would rub a lot of people the wrong ways, but that is something the committee is allowed to do. I think that this is something to keep an eye on. And like I said, you will get a taste with the college football playoff rankings this week, what they really think about Ohio State. Also, how far Michigan falls, because honestly, I think a lot of people who watched the game here Saturday afternoon believe that these are the two best teams in the Big Ten. And if Michigan stays kind of close, and there's some chaos. I mean, you're going to need chaos in the Pac-12. You're going to need it in the ACC championship, probably in Bedlam as well. You need Oklahoma State to win. Michigan, a road loss to Iowa and a loss to Ohio State, which the committee thinks is a really good team. That is a resume with 3 top 10 wins. That is a resume that the committee is going to give the benefit of the doubt and may be able to sneak in if a lot of chaos erupts. And that's going to take quite a bit. But there's always some of that, a little bit of that. Like I said, I think Virginia Tech's going to have a shot in their championship game. The Pac-12 championship could also be very interesting. I see a lot of comments that people are saying Ohio State is in. We don't know for sure, and who knows? I could be way more cautious than other analysts here, but I'm just saying we have not had a non-conference champion get into the playoff yet, so we don't necessarily know what unequivocally better looks like. We don't know yet, and this is going to be a really good test because Ohio State does look so good. They had a great non-conference schedule, and they won. They won at Oklahoma on the road. They've played their loss to Penn State on the road is not a bad loss. Not a bad loss in the committee's eyes, and on the road and a top 10 team. So they're going to present a really interesting case, and I think we're going to see them probably at number 2 again this week, because they were number 2 last week, and they just got a win over a top 3 team in the country right now. And this Michigan team is a team that the committee has a ton of respect for, especially that defense. The committee, eye test matters, and the offense did not look great for the Buckeyes. JT Barrett in the passing game, again, problematic, again inconsistent, but they did enough to win. And that's something that I think is going to be taken into consideration as we move forward. Oh, we have a surprise guest. My coworker, George Schroeder, is now here. Hold on. George, look up. You're on. You're on. Hi, George.
Hi, everybody.
You missed some of the analysis of this game here, which we were discussing, although now it's empty. What is your take on all right, George is texting. George is so busy.
There's a lot of things going on tonight, including big doings across the country, and so I'm sorry about that.
Well, mention some of them. We hit mostly on this and kind of impact for the playoff.
Well, Alabama did what you expected them to do, beating Auburn, looking good, basically shutting down a kind of a crippled Auburn offense and winning that game fairly easily, and kind of in classic Alabama style for this year. They grind and they pull away from people because you can't do anything against their defense. That happened. Then, of course, you have out in the Pacific Northwest, a game nobody's paying attention to in terms of national relevance, but Oregon State comes back from a deficit to beat Oregon 34-24 in Corvallis, and I think that's something worth paying attention to now, because there was a sense in Eugene after Oregon upset Utah last week at Utah that Mark Helfrich might just keep his job. And of course, the assumption was you go beat Oregon State, which is a team they've owned over the last few years.
First win since 2007, right? Today?
First win by the Beavers since 2007. I think that's right. And in fact, that is correct. So however many years in a row, however many games in a row, 8 or 9 games in a row, that if they won that game and finished 5-7, that there was at least some kind of an impetus that maybe you bring back Mark Helfrich. Maybe there's some staff changes, but you don't move at the top. I think that's all gone now, and I think it'll be real interesting to see what happens there, because part of the thing you want to do is you want to have somebody ready to go. You don't want to have a long drawn out coach search.
You mean like how Texas announced their new coach, Tom Herman, like
which
an
was
hour?
100 times better than 3 years ago, when they took forever took forever to fire Mac Brown or to have him resign, however you want to say it, and then it took a while to get Charlie Strong in. Look, they've got to make that decision at some point. The decision is probably a foregone conclusion at Oregon. I do believe that Mark Helfrich is going to either resign or be let go, and then we'll see where it goes from here. At that point, who do they have? They actually had been flirting a little bit with Tom Herman.
So now, this will be the highest profile opening now that LSU is filled. Ed Ogeron obviously staying on, the interim coach now being permanent, and then Tom Herman goes to Texas. So do you expect this to be kind of it for big jobs that opens?
Well, look, seems like there's always a surprise, and if there's going to be a surprise, it'll happen tomorrow or Monday. Kind of the firing season is on us. The only one that you think could possibly, or two that could possibly open, I don't think either will. One is Notre Dame, which
they lost today.
Yeah, they lost to USC. And at one point, I didn't see the final score, but they were way down. But they lost, and so I think that means they finished 4-8. And then at Texas A&M, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense given the overall record, but they started 6-0. And Kevin Sumlin went into the season, if you recall, on a pretty hot seat, and then that all went away, and it got very cool as they started 6-0. And then, look, there are a lot of different reasons that happened. Trevor Knight getting hurt certainly hurt them, but I think there's some unrest again for the Aggies. I don't think that Kevin Sumlin loses his job. I do think he's back on the hot seat again going into next year. I don't think Brian Kelly loses his job, but I think the pressure is on him now too. But those are two that if you were looking for big jobs that could open, I don't think they will, but they could. And then is there a surprise? Maybe somebody takes the Oregon job from somewhere we're not expecting, that opens a somewhat big job. I mean, you don't really know, because one thing that Oregon could do is throw a ton of money at somebody. So,
do you know offhand what Sumlin's buyout is? We just got a question from Rob.
Yeah, I think it's still about $10 million.
That's a little pricey.
Yeah. I don't have that right in front of me, obviously. See, but I can get on my smartphone. But
You should just memorize all buyouts
well, I
for all
should.
coaches.
You know, if we had Steve Berkowitz here, he would pull that folder out of his head and tell us.
This is true. So George, just last question, since I was getting some very heated comments when I was talking about the calls during this game and Jim Harbaugh's.
Why don't we jump in together here?
Okay, we can do it.
1 second.
Um,
1 second. Scoot over here. All right. This
Okay.
is
This
I'd
is
say it's
why I
live
was
TV,
trying-
but it's not.
I was trying to get another reporter to do this for us, but then I looked
sideways.
down.
Does that work?
I
See?
think,
Yeah, you
I think
can.
then we
That
go.
works.
All right, we'll try this. Okay, so I tended to agree. I mean, I don't like whining and saying that you lost the game based on officiating.
Right.
I've already mentioned some of the other things that they didn't do to win the game for Michigan, but I do think that Harbaugh had a point with some of those complaints. What was your take, especially on the 4th down play?
Well, look, I watched the play, and as it unfolded, I thought, oh, he's going to get the first down, no question, bam. And then he got hit, and you're like, oh my goodness, maybe he didn't get it. I mean, it just sort of came out of nowhere, the hit. And you kind of wonder if maybe the officials anticipated the same way we did in the press box, or at least I did in the press box. Oh, look, he's going to get there, and then didn't. But look, I don't know how you overturn it. There's some question as to maybe the way he got hit was his arm with the football, had it gotten to the line. But I didn't see anything definitive to overturn it once you spotted it there. And if they missed the spot, they didn't miss it by a ton. I know it doesn't take much. What I'm saying is there's no egregious miss there. They should have spotted him short, but I don't know how you really know one way or the other, frankly. That's what I thought about.
Well, and it certainly would have been weird to end the game on an overturned spot.
Yeah, I mean, conspiracy theorists will tell you that, and this is funny because it's not like Michigan is some upstart program, but
Right.
Conspiracy theorists would say there's no way they're going to go against Ohio State in this stadium.
Well, they did only have 2 penalties, 6 yards total.
Well, but I'm
I will
speaking
say.
specifically of
Oh,
that
in that
call.
moment, yes.
And in the game on that call. I mean, literally in the game on that call. People would tell you that. I'm not going to go there. I don't think that's a
But you did
deal.
bring them up.
I do hope, by the way, since the words didn't change and go sideways, I sure hope we're not sideways.
It actually might be. Are we sideways? Can someone tell me?
Well, we're not sideways now.
No, I know, but I can't tell. All of our people commenting, are we sideways right now on the screen? No one's responding. But we did get a question, what bowl game will Western Michigan go to? I think they're going to be in a driver's seat, I think, for the group of 5 spot.
Look, if they get the group of 5 bid, and I think they will, then they'll go to the Cotton Bowl.
I think we are sideways.
You think so?
I
No
do.
one's telling us.
Rob, you wrote yes. Yes, we are.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry about
well,
that.
okay, now let's turn this way. It is the most. That's. No,
Thank you, everyone. I am really sorry. That was all George's fault.
So we got a question: is that the most outspoken criticism of officiating you've heard in several years? I wasn't in the room. You were, but based on I've seen it kind of on the highlights and have read through the transcript and stuff like that. It's one of the more.
Yes.
Yeah, especially in a big game from a big, kind of a big, well-known, respected coach. We've seen rants before, but this is a different level. There's no question about that.
And I think we've seen a $20,000 fine this year, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Jimbo, perhaps.
Yeah, we have.
So we'll have to see how much. I mean,
the
it's a
Big
drop
Ten
in the
is
bucket.
obviously a different deal, and you're right. I mean, Jim Harbaugh makes enough money to where that's a little bit like. I mean, that's not even like
makes
you
$9
getting a
million.
$20 fine.
Yeah,
you know what
this
I mean?
would be like a
It's like
penny.
you getting a $2 fine.
Do you think he'll pay it in pennies?
I don't know. You actually make quite a bit of money, so that's not fair.
I don't make my $9
He probably will
million.
pay it in pennies, or else just say, I'm not paying it. What are you going to do?
Right.
Here's the thing about that. There were some other questionable calls. One of the ones that he talked about was a pass interference call that the ball was high and behind the receiver. I don't think he's right, and I'd like to see it again, in that I don't think that the contact happened after the ball went by.
The ball was uncatchable, though.
No, I agree with that.
with.
But if it had gone after the ball went by, they wouldn't have called it. It was before the ball went by. I do think it was uncatchable. So I think that was a bad call. And I think there were other bad calls. And surely you could find some calls that could have, would have, should have gone against the Buckeyes. That happens all the time in games. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though. You could be mad at the calls all you want. And I thought Wilton Speight played fairly well, but he made 3 critical errors.
Yep.
If he doesn't throw the pick 6, and if he doesn't throw the other pick
doesn't
deep in his
fumble
own
on the
territory
1-yard line.
that led directly to a touchdown. And if he doesn't fumble on the goal line, mishandled the snap on the goal
Right.
line, and I don't know whose fault that was, but it's a mishandled snap on the goal line that you're about to take it in for a touchdown. If you just make 2 of those 3 errors, you win the game in regulation. If you only make 1 of them, you win going away. And so you can whine about the officiating all you want. You got to make plays. I mean, that's I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for Jim on that. And he's a tremendous coach. I don't think that's great comportment for after the game.
Right, and that was my point too. So again, you can start this over if you want a little bit more of the nitty-gritty on the playoff breakdown. I will be back Tuesday to go through these playoff rankings. Again, keep an eye on where Ohio State sits, where it is in relation to Penn State, Wisconsin, and if they are comparable. And that's it. From
right,
George
guys.
Schroeder, Nicole Auerbach, thanks for watching.
Shoe.
From the shoe. Oops, wait, I'm having some technical difficulties.
You are having
Anyway, we're out. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.